Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the human body and the different systems. All right, so as we go through this lesson, I want you to think about what your favorite body system is and why, and then what is your least favorite body system, all right? If you're taking Bio B with me, that will also be one of the exit ticket questions. So let's start with the cardiovascular system. So you have the heart and the blood vessels. They transport materials using the blood. So they transport oxygen, carbon dioxide, nutrients, waste. It's a very efficient, important system. Okay, so take 1 second, name one function of the cardiovascular system. Okay, structures of the heart. Hopefully you found the transporting oxygen probably one of the more important things of the cardiovascular system. As we move on to the heart, which is the primary part of the cardiovascular system, you will see it's got several labels. So here you've got the right atrium, and then its counterpart over here, the left atrium, and then this bigger pocket, so to speak, is the right ventricle, and its mate over here, the left ventricle. Now, when you're looking at the heart, the way you're seeing it on the screen, when we're saying left and right, we're talking anatomically correct position. So if, I don't know if you've covered that before, I don't think we have, when you're facing forward, palms are facing back, the heart's in your chest, so your right arm is the right side of your heart, left arm's the left side of the heart. This picture here, we've taken the heart and turned it around. Okay, so the right atrium will be on the left side of your screen, and the left atrium will be on the right side of your screen. Excuse me. So another way to view this is we're looking at it as if it was in a person. So you open someone up, you're staring at their heart. Okay. We have a couple things. We have interesting, this valve here, bicuspid valve or the mitral valve. Yes, it has two names. It has two pieces that help anchor it into the ventricle. It's one of the flaps that opens and closes to allow blood to go through. Then over here is the tricuspid valve, and it looks a little funky, but it's got three main portions that help anchor it. All right. Now here's just an easier picture to look at without all the labels. These are kind of the important parts. You can see these valves here. You can see these veins. You can see the arteries, that type of thing. Interestingly enough, the deoxygenated blood comes into the right side of the heart. Not through there. Through here, sorry. So these valves, superior and inferior valves, and it goes in here, and then it goes out the pulmonary arteries to the lungs, and then it comes back in the body through the pulmonary veins on both sides. So these actually come in somewhere over here. Blood goes down and then out through the aorta. So it's kind of a simple system, but complex in terms of how it has to work together. I don't know what I was going to say. All right, so let's go on to blood vessels. Blood vessels are a network of tubes made up of arteries, capillaries, and veins. So the arteries take blood from the heart to the rest of the body. Capillaries are where the gas exchange takes place for the oxygen and the carbon dioxide. The capillaries are at the very end of the system. Then the veins will take the blood back to the heart. You've got skeletal muscles that will contract and they kind of massage, or they use a peristaltic movement to force the blood back from the legs up to the heart. only one way, and that should say one-way valves here, so the blood can't flow backwards. When these valves break, that's when you'll get the varicose veins forming. So what kind of blood do veins carry? Oxygenated or deoxygenated? Hopefully you said deoxygenated. Okay, so here's another cool thing. Your blood is made up of a ton of different things. Well, not a ton, but many different things. So you've got the red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, which are used for clotting, plasma, also glucose, fatty acids, amino acids, carbon dioxide, urea, and hormones. And urea is given off in your urine. It's also given off in your sweat. So if you look at this, plasma makes up 55% of your blood, and your white blood cells make up just this teeny part right here, and then your red blood cells make up 45%. Do you know what your white blood cells do? Hopefully you said they're used in the immune system. If not, that's what they're for. All right, your respiratory system keeps the blood supplied with oxygen and removes carbon dioxide. We'll talk about this more in depth right here. So you've got your respiratory organs. So it starts with your nose and your mouth. So you breathe in air, it goes into the nasal cavities. It can also, if you inhale, through the mouth, comes down the pharynx, down the larynx, which the larynx opens and has a flap, depending if you're breathing or eating, and that opens and closes. Then you've got your trachea, then you've got your branching off, the bronchi, and then you've got your lungs, the left and right lung, and then your diaphragm underneath that. Now if you look at this picture, the right lungs have 3 lobes. The left lung has 2. Anyone know why? What's behind that? Hopefully you said the heart. So you have, with the respiratory system, you have 2 zones. One's called a conducting zone. So the passages carry air to the site of gas exchange, which is the carbon dioxide and the oxygen. As it enters, it filters, humidifies, and warms the air. Now, when you breathe in through your nose, that air is actually warmer when you exhale than if you breathe through your mouth. Does anyone have any ideas why? Give you a second to think about it. All right, so if you look at this picture, nostrils, then you have all these sinuses right here. So the air goes in, bounces around in here, and then goes out. So it spends more time inside. Now if you breathe in and breathe out, right, that's not going to warm it up enough. So breathing in through your nose warms the air. Also the nose helps filter, where the mouth doesn't filter so much. Your respiratory zone is the site of the actual gas exchange. Has the respiratory bronchioles, so a smaller division from the bronchus. You have alveolar ducts and you have alveolar sacs, and that's where as they get smaller and smaller, the gas exchange occurs in the alveolar sacs. Now, next question. Which zone is the site of gas exchange? Conducting or respiratory? Hopefully you said respiratory. So here's another picture of gas exchange showing you the alveoli and then the capillaries, CO2 going out to be expelled and oxygen coming in to be sent to the rest of the body. Then I always like showing these pictures as well, so you can see this is just a portion of the lung that's been sectioned for the slide, showing you the alveolus, which is a singular alveoli, singular of alveoli, and then your capillaries. All right, so let's move on to the skeletal system. Skeletal system protects and supports the body organs. Also provides muscle attachment for movement. So if the muscles aren't attached, you can't move. Well, you might, but you're not going to get anywhere. Also the site of blood cell formation in the bones, and the bones store minerals. So, in terms of blood cell production, you've got the red and white blood cells and platelets that are made in the bones. The ends of the long bones, so your legs, your arms, those types of things. Oh, here we go. Including ribs, humerus, femur, vertebrae, they all contain bone marrow. Okay. This is where blood cells are produced. We just said that. The shaft of the long bones, so the middle of the long bones, is filled with what's called yellow bone marrow, and it produces fat, cartilage, and bone. So here's a picture. So here's the red marrow embedded in the spongy bone at the end of the long bone, right? And then here's the yellow bone marrow, which is in the shaft of the bone. So what type of marrow stores fat? Remember, your choices are red or yellow. Your answer hopefully was yellow. All right, so the rest of the systems we're just going to cover fairly quickly. So the muscular system produces movement, maintains posture, and produces heat. So when you're exercising, right, you get warm or hot, and that's because the muscular system produces heat when it's working. Skin, integumentary is what it's called. Skin is an oversimplified term, but it's easiest for people to understand. So forms the external body covering, protects the deeper tissue from injury, helps regulate body temperature, and it's the location of cutaneous nerve receptors. So the way that you can feel touch, heat, all of that, those are on the surface of the skin. So what is one function of the skin that surprised you out of those four we listed? All right. So let's go a little bit more deeper, a little deeper, not more deeper, into the skin. So the skin itself has different layers. You've got the epidermis, the dermis, and the subcutaneous layer. Subcutaneous meaning under, right? You've got hair shafts, sweat glands, dermal papillae, basement membranes, touch receptors, sweat gland pores, sweat gland ducts, those types of things. Lots of fun there. So the epidermis itself, made of epithelial tissue. It's the very outermost layer. You have the stratum corneum, which is this layer on the top here, dead cells with the hard protein envelope. They contain keratin surrounded by lipids. Those are the top. Then you have stratum lucidum, dead cells containing dispersed keratohyalin. We don't need to know that one. Then you've got the stratum granulosum. Looks like it's got little granules in it. And then the stratum spinosum. Looks like it has little spines on it. Those are keratin fibers. It's where things start to accumulate to move up through the epidermis. And then the stratum basal. Cells divide by mitosis. Get some new forms forming, new cells forming. And so we've gone from superficial, which means on top or surface, all the way down to the deep portion of the skin. Okay, so homeostasis is the goal of your skin. So it helps protect you against cold and heat, either by releasing cold or heat or storing it, or storing moisture. You can prevent mechanical impact. So if you get hit by something or something sharp bumps you, or you run into a wall, anything that it's strong enough that it kind of keeps that from penetrating the skin. Also protects tissue against chemical and physical damage. And so this, for example, hydrochloric acid in labs, sometimes you use it, even in the classroom. So what happens is that hydrochloric acid, when it touches your skin, you're going to feel a little burning sensation. And obviously you need to go wash your hands, but it'll leave a brown mark, so a little brown burn. But the skin protected it from entering any further into your body. Prevents microorganisms from penetrating. Everybody has bacteria on their skin. You also have a certain type of staph on your skin, staphylococcus. So if you get poked a bunch of times, like you're in the hospital, eventually you might end up with a staph infection, easily treatable. It can destroy microorganisms. It can allow resorption, so it will allow things in. It also prevents excess dehydration, but it also allows water to evaporate, helps sebaceous glands stay plump, synthesis of hydrolipids. It also utilizes pressure, vibration, and tactile sensation at the cutaneous layer. Remember that word from before? Cutaneous, not subcutaneous, but cutaneous on top. All right, so that's the end of the skin. Let's talk quickly about the nervous system. It is a fast-acting control system. It responds to internal and external change, activates muscles and glands. It has to be fast because that's where all your reflexes, things like that come from. So it's got to be fast. It's like when you touch a hot stove. Your nervous system makes you jerk your hand away because it's hot. And it, like I said, fast acting. We'll talk about the endocrine system in a little bit, which is the slow acting portion. So, your brain, major part of your nervous system. You've got the cerebral cortex. It's that outermost layer of gray matter. It's responsible for higher reasoning and for mental functioning. This is really my favorite part of the brain, or one of them, but I like the different lobes. So in the front, you have the frontal lobe. It's where you do your thinking, your planning, your organizing, behavior control, that type of thing. Then to the right of that is your motor cortex, which is with movement. Then your sensory cortex for sensations. Then your parietal lobe, which deals with perception, arithmetic, spelling, just kind of generally making sense. Then your occipital lobe, which is your vision. So a lot of times when people, not a lot of times, but sometimes when people get a concussion, they damage this. It could cause you to go blind. One of the reasons to wear a helmet, right? And then your temporal lobe is for memory, understanding, and language. So, which lobe controls vision? Hopefully you said occipital. All right, neurons. This is a smaller look into the nervous system. Neurons conduct the nerve signal, and they do this by using sodium and potassium ions. We'll kind of cover it briefly. So you have, this is a neuron over here. Okay, you have dendrites. Things are coming in. So the dendrites receive messages. Here's the cell body. Here's your nucleus with your DNA. The axon is this purple thing right here that's running through. Okay. Neural impulses, also called action potential. It's the electrical signaling that drives it through the system. This is called a myelin sheath. It's actually like insulation, and it allows the signal to jump from gap to gap till the end, so it allows them to move faster. Then you have your terminal branches, which these here are considered junctions, gaps, synaptic clefts, synaptic gaps. They have a couple different terms. Now over here, with the sodium and potassium ions, you have different things going on. So in a resting state, you have your cell and you have the space that it has to kind of jump across. You've got your potassium ions. K means potassium. They're negatively charged. Sodium ions are positively charged. Now when an action potential occurs, these depolarize and they flip. So the sodium's going in and the potassium's coming out. When it gets done, or as towards the end, then it's repolarizing, so the potassium's coming back in and the sodium's going back out. And so it does all of this until it gets back to the resting potential where it's all evened out. All right. Okay. So the endocrine system regulates, secretes regulatory hormones, growth, reproduction, metabolism, all that good stuff. Here are the different things in the pituitary system. So pineal gland, pituitary gland. Pituitary gland is one of my favorite glands because it's about the size of a chickpea. And it just hangs from a stalk. So you've got your pituitary gland, and then you've got this little thin piece that attaches it, and it rests in a part of the skull called the sella turcica. It's just a little, dip that allows that to be in there. Then you've got your thyroid gland. Often it's a butterfly-shaped gland. This is where thyroid or goiters come in. Your thymus, your adrenal glands, your pancreas, and then the male and female reproductive parts. So what is a hormone? Hormones are messengers. They're meant for specific cells and tissues. So they don't just randomly throw in there. They go to certain parts. So glands of the endocrine system. Here we go. I matched it for you. The adrenal glands give off adrenaline or epinephrine. The pancreas gives off insulin and glucagon, so that's responsible for the sugar issues for diabetes as well. The thyroid gland gives off thyroxine. Pituitary gland gives off FSH and LH, which are female hormones, although males also have some. The ovaries give off estrogen and progesterone. And the testes give off testosterone. So what hormone do you find interesting out of the ones we named there? Adrenal gland, pancreas, hormones. Insulin, glucagon, thyroxine, estrogen, epinephrine, /adrenaline, FSH, LH, and testosterone. All right, so the lymphatic, aka the immune system. The lymphatic system returns blood fluids to the blood vessels, so it's one way of keeping the water and the liquid stuff in the body. Helps cleanse the blood by getting rid of pieces of cells and different things that have been broken up or died. It's involved in immunity because it transfers B cells and T cells throughout the body. It's also bad because if you have cancer and it gets into the lymph nodes, it can spread quickly because the lymph nodes are very efficient that way. So here's some different types of lymphocytes. So it starts with a blood stem cell, and it can go into either a myeloid stem cell or a lymphoid stem cell. Lymphoid stem cells end up becoming plasma cells, lymphocytes, natural killer cells. The myeloid stem cell becomes red blood cells, platelets. Then it also has the granulocytes, which are white blood cells with granules in them, eosinophil, neutrophil, and basophil. So here's kind of another way to look at them. Neutrophil looks like this. Eosinophil looks like lungs. Basophil is just kind of a funky shaped, more of a blobby center. And then the monocyte is like a giant N without granules, so you don't see any little dots in there. And then you've got your actual lymphocyte, and that one's just kind of solid. Let's look at the immune response. So your innate immunity is your rapid response. It's right there. It can take care of things immediately. So throughout most of your body, you have macrophages. So like in your skin, in your lungs, everywhere. It is a white blood cell. It will attack anything that it needs to attack. So you also have natural killer cells. They're called NK cells. Those are like the kamikaze pilots. They'll go in and again kill things. Then you have the neutrophil, eosinophil, basophils. Those kind of wander through, and you also have dendritic cells. Now, the adaptive immunity is the slower one. That's the one that builds up antibodies and memory cells. But the one thing they share are T cells and natural killer T cells, which are a little bit different from natural killer cells. Same concept, but these help activate the immune responses. So with cellular immunity, it deals only with infected cells that need to be eliminated, and the cytotoxic T cells recognize and destroy abnormal cells. In humoral immunity, your B lymphocytes will produce antibodies against virus, bacteria, fungi, protozoa, anything that can harm the body. These antibodies destroy the threat and remember it for later. So when you get vaccines, you're building up your humoral immunity with the idea that later on you won't get that disease or that virus, that bacteria, whatever. Or if you get it, it's a weaker reaction. You don't have it as bad. So which response produces antibodies? Cellular or humoral? Hopefully you said humoral. All right, so digestive system is comprised of the oral cavity, the esophagus, the stomach, small intestine, large intestine, rectum, anus. So basically it's one long tube starting at your mouth and exiting at the anus. Breaks down food, allows for nutrient absorption into the blood, and then it eliminates indigestible material. The passage through which food travels is called the alimentary canal. Digesting food is moved through the alimentary canal by wave-like muscle contractions known as peristalsis. So that's the best example, wave-like contractions of peristalsis. Your body uses this concept, this peristalsis, throughout to help move things. So when it's moving things up like blood up through the body, it's using, even though it's using semilunar valve, you have the peristalsis as well to help keep the blood moving back up. All right, so there's two types of digestion, mechanical and chemical. The mouth uses salivary amylase, which starts the breakdown of carbohydrates. So it deals with starches, okay? Stomach, mechanical and chemical breakdown. You've got the hydrochloric acid, which starts, which kills the bacteria, and having the HCl kick in causes pepsin to come in and help break down the proteins. And then you've got chyme, which is the everything all together kind of mushy. And yes, that's a technical description. Okay, so let me point out, okay, so this is breaking a cracker into tiny pieces in your mouth is an example of what type of digestion. So I'm going to kind of give this to you. So we have mechanical digestion and chemical digestion. So mechanical digestion is the act of chewing. Okay, so you're physically doing something. Like if you're squeezing a ball, well, that doesn't work, does it? Anyways, mechanical digestion is when you're breaking it down by chewing it. Then chemical digestion is where you get the amylase, the hydrochloric acid, those types of things. So breaking a cracker into tiny pieces is an example of mechanical digestion. In the urinary system, that's very important. It eliminates waste. It maintains the acid-base balance, or pH stays in this narrow range. Also regulates water and electrolytes. Parts of the urinary system: kidney, ureter, urinary bladder, urethra. And we're going to talk about that here in more detail in just a second, because it's all also part of the excretory system. So the main organs are the kidneys, the bladder, urethra, and ureter. And then urea is a byproduct of protein digestion that has to be filtered out. That's one of the things I said was part of the, you can sweat it out or pee it out. Now, so the bladder is down here. The urethra is this long tube, and then the ureter transports things from the kidneys down to the urinary bladder. So how does the kidney work? Okay, so you have filtration. Filtration occurs as the first stage as the increased blood pressure forces the smaller substances through the capillary into the Bowman's capsule. And then the glomerulus is a ball of blood vessels. You don't have to remember that, but the glomerulus is where everything happens. Then in the second stage, the proximal convoluted tubules, which are these. Well, there's proximal and distal. So proximal are the ones that are closest to the glomerulus, and the ones that are distal are farthest. Even though when you're looking at this path, you know, it's doing this, and then over here again it's close, but in reality it's far, because this is where it starts and this is where it's getting to the end. Most reabsorption occurs in this process through active transport. So as things are moving, it's filtering. Stages 3 and 4, you've got the stuff moving out of the loop of Henle, which is this down here. By passive diffusion, so things are coming out, things are going in just as they fit. And then step 5, the collecting duct carries water to the ureter. I don't have a picture of the collecting duct. So it's kind of interesting and and when we're looking at this picture, we're looking at a very small part of the nephrons of this kidney. Reproductive system. So the reproductive system produces offspring. That's what it's designed for. In the males, the sex cells are called sperm. You've got the tail that helps move it. You've got the middle piece. You've got the head, the cell membrane, and then inside the head is the nucleus containing DNA. Sperm are produced in sex organs called testes, which you go over a little more in depth in class. Sex cells for the female, they're called eggs. You have a nucleus containing DNA, you've got a membrane, you've got cytoplasm, and you've got a jelly coat. The sperm have to break through the jelly coat to get in. So they use enzymes, and when the head or the acrosome gets in touch with the egg, then no other sperm can get through. It's kind of a interesting setup. So fertilization and implantation. So you have the egg, or I'm sorry, the ovum, because it's not fertilized yet. Then fertilization occurs here. Then the fusion of the sperm and egg, and as it goes, it keeps going and dividing and dividing. Interestingly enough, it's not until it's a morula that it's left this and entered the uterus and implants. Here they showed implanting right there. Okay, so it's a very interesting, complex process. If you have any questions, you can email me. That's the end of our slides for right now. Have a good afternoon.